David Bauer, qui va nous faire une présentation sur les plateformes temps réel de virologie et immunity, les leçons qu'on a apprises du Covid-19 de Londres, de l'ouest de Londres et au-delà. Donc, M. Bauer est un virologue et est le responsable du RNA Virus Replication Laboratory au niveau du Francis Crick Institute à Londres. Donc, M. David, vous avez la parole.
Merci beaucoup, Prof. Mbaye. I will present in English, mais en français. Tout d'abord, je tiens à remercier les organisateurs, le réseau WANIDA, l'équipe ACE Partner et nos autres organes au WACPIP. Merci pour l'invitation et pour l'opportunité de présenter ici aujourd'hui. I will present in English. Thank you again to the organizers for the opportunity to present and speak. I'm going to talk briefly about our experiences at the Francis Crick Institute in London. And of course, while these might seem to be a world away from other countries in the world, and in fact they are often a world away from other laboratories within the United Kingdom, there are some really important lessons that we've learned about the possibilities for us as researchers to contribute immediately and directly in the course of a pandemic. I will talk at the end about some new collaborations that we founded and some of our hopes for capacity building in terms of how to approach pandemics in real time. So as a brief introduction, for those of you who were not able to see Professor Langhorn's talk this morning, the Francis Crick Institute is a large research institute, allegedly the largest in Europe. And you can imagine it's like the entire US National Institutes of Health compressed inside one very large building, maybe the size of a football stadium. And it goes down underground as much as it goes up. And we're in the center of London, right next to the Eurostar terminal. So we have lots of opportunities to get around and escape the little island that we live on. It's a beautiful facility, it's huge. And there are people working on everything from cancer to neuro things to biophysics, and of course, immunity and infectious disease. We host one of the 6 WHO collaborating centers for influenza, which is kept busy updating the flu vaccine. In fact, they receive lots of samples here from Ghana. And we also have a set of science and technology platforms, which are core facilities where they function not just to provide services, but they also have experts in these techniques, almost like a technical laboratory, to support research not only for the technique, but to collaborate with everybody else. And you've heard a bit about the Crick African Network and how that works this morning. So when COVID-19 came to the Crick, I didn't work there. I only joined about 6 months into the pandemic. But my lab looks very similar to the rest of the institute. So we are about 9 people, and these people come from very different backgrounds. So yes, there are virologists, but there are also people who are molecular biologists who study RNA. They're chemists even. We have people who have immunology backgrounds in working with mice and with larger mice called people. And we've spent a lot of time working not just on our own about COVID-19, but collaborating with a study that the Crick set up called the Legacy Study. And this on the ground is led by Dr. Emma Wall, who is a consultant in infectious disease, by Mary Wu, who is an expert in automation and robotics. She is not the robot, but and Ed Carr, who is a nephrologist, a kidney doctor, who has a strong interest in immunology and vaccines. And so together, along with all of our colleagues at the Francis Crick Institute, we've been spending lots of time to understand COVID and immunity. The first thing that the Crick did was to set up PCR testing in March 2020. And the Crick did this as a large effort together with its partner hospital at University College London. And at that time, in March 2020, there was no testing capacity available in the UK whatsoever. But like all big cities in the world, or at least within Europe and the US, they got a very large wave of COVID very quickly. And so the CRIC partnered together with the hospital and with a diagnostic laboratory to set up PCR testing very, very quickly. And so the government was not doing much of anything at that time. They were thinking about setting up very large facilities, and the CRIC simply did it. At the end, we ended up conducting nearly 750,000 tests, serving 9 public hospitals, 89 care homes for the elderly and disabled, which of course, in that environment, people are in very close contact. It's very hard to avoid COVID, so it takes a really good effort to test people and quarantine them. 1 mental health trust, which has similar situations, as well as 4 research institutes to allow people to come back to work. What was most interesting to me as a scientist is that if you look at this graph of all the tests that were done, so most of them, of course, are negative, and that's what's shown in green. But even just us, by the time the government started doing testing, we were a very small piece of the puzzle. But down here, you can still see the waves of the pandemic. So this was what became known as the Alpha variant that hit us. At the same time, Southern Africa was experiencing what became the Beta variant, and South America was experiencing what became known as the Gamma variant. We were able to take these samples for the purposes of surveillance and sequence them together with a large British consortium called COG UK. And what's most striking is that even in our tiny little corner, in our little research institute, little compared to a large national laboratory, we were able to follow the entire path of the pandemic. So we were like a little microcosm, a micro version of society in London. And so you could see each of the variants as they came along. And so as a result of that, the CRIC decided together with its hospital partner to set up a research study for the next phase of the pandemic. So that is, okay, we are all going to get vaccinated, or if not vaccinated, infected, and hopefully recovered. What happened with people's immunity? And so the question for the public health point is, do vaccines still protect us? So we have now 821 adults in our study, and people were subjected to weekly PCR testing, not optionally, but mandatory as part of the institute and the hospital's policies. So we know when people had COVID, and we know what variant they had. We know what vaccine they had and when they had it. And since they volunteered for the study, we also are drawing blood regularly, so we can look at PBMCs and at serum. And so this provides an extremely rich set of data to understand what's happened to these different people. Is there a difference if the first variant you encountered was Omicron or Delta? Did it matter if you were infected before you were vaccinated or after? Now, as you can probably start to imagine the multiplication in your head, 821 people, maybe 8 or 10 samples just of blood alone, that starts to become an unreasonable amount of work and very expensive for reagents. And so for this, we turned to the science technology platforms at the CRIC, who were able to miniaturize a live virus neutralization assay within high containment labs. And so what ends up happening is in 384 well format, we were able to test whether serum is able to neutralize one variant versus another. And this is a much more sensitive method for detecting or predicting protection from infection than an ELISA, because an ELISA is telling you about sticking, but not if it neutralizes. At the same time, we are able to look at infection dynamics, so how do people's viral loads go up and down? And as a result of this, we've ended up publishing a series of papers looking first at people who'd received the Pfizer vaccine as the Delta wave started to take off. But critically, there were no studies at that time about people who had received the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine, which of course is the basis for the COVAX program that's been used. And so we put out a call within the CRIC to ask people who had received the Oxford vaccine to please volunteer. And within 2 weeks, we had bled over 150 people and put them through this pipeline. And we were able to go back and confidently say that people were still going to be protected, especially if they had been previously infected with SARS-CoV-2. This, of course, has continued for the new variants, And as well, we are trying to come up with an understanding of how monoclonal antibodies protect people. So the outcome of this for us has not just been nice publications, but real-time data sharing. We put everything online. We put all the raw data that we can onto GitHub. People have taken this data to do modeling. We, of course, pass it to the government. These are acronyms for important people in the UK, like the Chief Medical Officer. We've published lots of papers and also had an impact on policy. But most importantly for us, of course, is now the pandemic, right? If for practical purposes, it's over. If you are extremely vulnerable or sick or immunocompromised, it's still a problem. But for our daily lives, I mean, we are here, we are traveling. What we want to do is partner with other people within the CRIC and without, with a focus on trying to do discovery science, because that's what we do. We are fundamentally about understanding why. Why do things work the way they do? Of course, applying that to policy is really important for public health and also translation. So can we improve medical practice or policy practice in an applied way? And so one of the key questions that we all have heard about yesterday, both from Yao Bediako in his talk about Yamachi and biotech, which he mentioned at the end, and Peter Kwashi's work at WACBIP has been trying to pick apart why was COVID so different in West Africa? Of course, there were lots of lockdowns, and there were lots of severe consequences for society. But actually, the experience was very different from what we experienced in London and what others experienced in India, China, North and South America. And so we've established a consortium, first bringing together the legacy study at the CRIC and the heritage study led by Yamachi Biotech and Yao. And Yao's study is completely independent. It's his idea, it's his baby. But the important question still remains. What were the differences? And so by comparing things together on the same platform with standardized methods, we hope to gain some insight. But of course, that's not going to convince the rest of the world, because people will simply shrug and they will say, ah, yes, but you know, West Africans are different somehow from people in London, and you don't really know. Is it environment? Is it genetics? Is it some combination? Populations are different. People are younger. People are older. And so what we looked for was perhaps something that could serve to as close as of a control as we can find. And that, of course, lies in the West Indies, in the Caribbean. And so there is another study, which they have renamed Windfall to line up with our naming, which is very similar, studying adults in Jamaica who are healthy before they were vaccinated, after they were vaccinated, with serial drawing. And of course, in Jamaica, we have overlapping genetic ancestry between all three locations. We have very similar vaccination regimes to West Africa and West London, and roughly similar course of the pandemic, one variant then the other. But in Jamaica, the experience of COVID has not been like West Africa. In fact, it's been very similar to that of the US or West London. So why is it that in that situation, where the age distribution is roughly similar to West Africa or India, why did the outcome look more like India or the US than it did West Africa? And so we've put together a consortium bringing together the University of the West Indies together with these studies, as well as WACBIP here. And in London, the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine for doing computational modeling, and our clinical hospital partner who's run our study. And so we have funding now from the Wellcome Trust to start this and get going. So we are just starting. And we have key questions. One is, of course, what I told you. Why was COVID so mild? And there are 4 hypotheses. One is maybe it was a little bit different. So I said it was all the same. Maybe I'm lying a little bit. Maybe there were slightly different variants which set you up for a different immune response when a nastier one came later. So we will check. We will check serum from all different locations with the different variants and see if there is some better ability early on to neutralize one versus the other. The second might be that people have different exposures to circulating natural coronaviruses. So bats, for example. I mean, if you step outside here in the evening, there are lots of bats flying around. London, not so much. In the West Indies, not quite as much, depending on where you live. The third one, of course, is almost too obvious. In fact, Professor Awandare has told me very certainly that it will end up being number 3. But he is, of course, a malaria biologist himself, so I would imagine that would be what he would say. So the one big difference, of course, in West Africa is there is endemic malaria. There is not in Jamaica. In fact, malaria was eradicated in the 1960s. There is, however, sometimes importation of malaria from Haiti to Jamaica. So there will be some people in this cohort who will be positive. It will be interesting to see what they find. And the last one, of course, is somehow a different immunoreactivity. So does pathogen burden overall contribute? Does the level of inflammation response somehow contribute? And again, we have heard in the talks in the past 2 days some hints that that very well might be the case. So we will be able to genotype people, to carefully control things, to try to address these things. And the second thing we will do is harmonize our studies and transfer capacity, because this is not about the British Museum model of science, where you send everything on a plane to London and you never see it for the next 300 years. The first is we are transferring our live virus assay to WACBIP, because there are, of course, CL3 facilities, BSL3 facilities at the Noguchi. We actually are not set up to do pseudovirus neutralizations. That's something that Peter Kwashi has spent a lot of time getting set up, and he is going to transfer that both back to us so that we can learn how to do this assay, as well as to the University of the West Indies. In turn, the University Hospital of the West Indies does lots of diagnostic testing, so on sort of a level where the information is not quite as rich. But if we build up large cohorts, we want to see, can you actually squeeze information out from this data? And so they are going to pass that back to us, and to the team at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, who is transferring modeling to the University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago. And so as a result of this, we will have standardized data, same methods, coordinated with same assays, which I won't talk about too much. But basically, we do these in 96 well format for neutralization. This is in CL3. You can, things went quickly. Sorry. We can scan them on a microscope. We have an automated web-based system for interacting with all of the data. This can be boxed up in a little container. You can run it on a laptop. You don't need a crazy system to do this. And all of this is calibrated to the WHO international standards. So instead of simply reporting on a set of data from location X, where people will shrug and say, oh, I don't know what that y-axis, what does that number mean? You can actually calibrate your results. We get very, very high throughput, about 2,500 samples per week. And critically, we've set up a set of open source standards. So we are going to release this to anybody who wants them. You don't need to access the WHO's samples for the international standard. We struggle to get a hold of them. God help anybody else. They are like 5 kilometers up the road from us, and we still can't get them. So we've created synthetic standards that if you can express proteins in E. coli, you can make these yourself. They're stable. You don't need to do anything very fancy. And it allows you, as you can see in the middle, to run an assay 1 year later and still get the same results. Critically, you don't need even a microscope. On the right-hand side are curves generated with a plate reader. So you don't need some fancy imaging platform either. So I will just end by saying the ultimate aim is to take these models that we develop, share them out. Share them out to the individual sites first, who will say, can we predict immunity and immune responses? And how much data do we really need? Because of course we don't clearly need to do all of it, but it would be nice to know how much information do you need, not in London, but in different settings. Oh. I will end now. And just thank the partners, Professor Awandare, Yalbe Diako, Peter Kwashi, in the West Indies, Christine Carrington, Josh Anzinger, and in West London, Emma Wall and Adam Kucharski. And of course, all of our partners, and thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup pour cette brillante présentation sur cette recherche très intéressante. Moi, j'ai des questions, mais je vais d'abord laisser la parole au public pour des questions. Nous avons le temps pour 3 ou 4 questions. Une question? Oui, là. Oui, ils vont vous apporter le...
Thank you very much for that beautiful presentation. Because all the work that we do must translate to patient management. So I'm so much interested in the study where you show 821 participants. And then, if I get you correctly, you enroll them pre-infection, is that correct?
They've been enrolled either pre-infection, but after vaccination, most of them, because they were being vaccinated very early in the UK,
Okay.
or after infection, because they were allowed, if they had a positive test, to also join.
Okay. The first thing is this. Out of those 821 that you follow up for almost 2 years, do they all complete that 2 years? If they do not, did you do risk assessment on them? And then if you do, were you able to identify any factors that are associated to the outcome that you classify as a risk? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. And one of the problems of doing observational research is it's not like test tubes or lab mice. The people do what they want to do. Some of them have left the study. Some of them have left the crick. They moved on to other jobs, so we can't follow them up. None have died, thankfully. These are mostly healthy working age adults, and so we are not recruiting in the hospital setting from patients who are very sick. We are just recruiting from the staff. We don't know clearly enough what the risk factors are, but we can see that there are some innate features about people in how they respond to vaccines. So you might imagine that you have immunocompromised people. They would respond badly to vaccination or infection. And you might have people who have been vaccinated and infected, and they would have super immunity. But actually a normal, healthy adult tends to have two kinds of responses. They either respond quite narrowly to the vaccine, or they respond quite broadly, and they're protected against lots of different variants. And so we're trying to understand exactly that. This isn't a risk factor for severe illness, but it was a risk factor for whether or not you got BA2 Omicron. So if you are in this broad responding group, you didn't get it, more likely. And so we think this has something to do with how people's immune systems are responding, and hopefully we will find some factor, but we don't know yet. It's a good question.
Merci. Une dernière question, peut-être? Vous avez levé la main? Ok. Une dernière question? Alors moi, j'avais une question par rapport à vos données. Est-ce que vous les mettez en open data pour que des chercheurs de différents secteurs puissent les utiliser? Et l'autre question, c'est une question de curiosité, c'est quoi l'immunoréactivité? C'est en tant qu'informaticien.
So I will answer the first question. All the data, was it a question?
Yeah.
So all the data that we've put online, you can find in the appendix to our papers. So there is a GitHub link. You can go and you can see that people are forking it and doing stuff. And we can see that there are some publications from groups in India and Australia where they've just taken the data. And this is the point. We remove any identifiable information, so you can't look at it and figure out, that's Professor so-and-so in the study. But so we think that this is the way forward. I mean, we are funded by charities and by taxpayers, and there's no reason to hold the data. It doesn't help anybody. So we think this is really important. The second was about immunoreactivity. So one of the things that's kind of clear as I answered to the previous question is that people react differently. Even normal, healthy people in London, where people's infection history is quite homogeneous. And if you extrapolate from that, you wonder if people are living in environments where they encounter different pathogens throughout their lives, not even different numbers, but just different ones, whether this sets the register for how they will respond in the future. And of course, people are never directly comparing with the same methods, with collaboration, within the same network, the same approaches. And so it's easy to ignore and not get an answer and to dismiss for technical reasons when people make comparisons. So we think it's really important to work together for this.
Merci beaucoup. Je vous demande de l'applaudir.
Merci.
S'il vous plaît.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Alors, nous allons passer sans tarder à la deuxième présentation de Madame Florence Koumarian Pradel. S'il vous plaît. Donc, elle est responsable head manager de GRABIEL, la Global Approach Biological Research on Infectious Epidemics in Low Income Countries, au niveau de la Fondation Mérieux. Vous avez la parole pour 15 minutes, le temps de nous présenter.
Merci beaucoup. First, I would like to thank the WANIDA organizer for the invitation and for giving me the opportunity to present the Gabriel Network. So, I am Florence Koumarian Pradel from Fondation Mérieux, and I am in charge of the coordination of the International Scientific Network, which is named Gabriel, which serves capacity building in research and surveillance on infectious disease. So, Gabriel Network is a network of 22 research institutions located in 3 different continents, in Asia, Africa, in South America. So, as I said, it's coordinated by Mérieux Foundation. So, Mérieux Foundation is an independent family foundation which was created in 1967 by Dr. Charles Mérieux, and we have a public interest status. We are a foundation, an operating foundation who work in the field side to side with our partners. And the mission of the network is to enhance local applied research capabilities. So by improving laboratory and hospital-based surveillance and research capacity for infectious disease that have a major impact on public health. To strengthen also capacity to conduct clinical research, and also faster assessment of innovative diagnostic tools. So here you have the map of current members. As you can see, we have members so in Caribbean with Centro Gestio in Haiti. We have 3 members in Brazil. In Paraguay, you have also a lot of members in Africa, in Cameroon with the Centre Pasteur of Cameroon, in Madagascar, in Republic of Congo, in Democratic Republic of Congo, in Mali, and also in Lebanon, in Georgia, and in Asia. So our members are either linked to universities, or linked to hospitals, or are linked directly to Ministry of Health. Some of them have are national reference laboratory, for example, for flu in Brazil, on leprosy in Madagascar, or on TB in Georgia. So we have different types of activities within Gabriel. Activity for the coordination and the structuration of the network, activity for the capacity building, and activity to implement collaborative research projects. For our first activities, in order to strengthen the South-South collaboration, we initiated a few years ago a call for proposals. That means that the members work together, at least 3 members of the network, to propose a common project in order to launch a pilot study, and after that to be able to search for external funding. Another point that is very important for the network is our international meetings that occur every 18 months. The next one will be co-organized with St. Pasteur in Cameroon in May of this year. We also started to organize a lot of webinars, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, when it was not possible to travel. Concerning the capacity building, training workshops, we organize a lot of training and workshops on site. And for example, in last December, we organized a workshop on bioinformatics in Senegal. We also develop e-learning training. We are currently developing with FOUND a training on bioinformatics. We have also a program to support the next generation of researchers by providing a doctoral fellowship. We have also started this kind of program with ERD last year to provide also some scholarship for Gabriel members and to allow a partnership with some Center of IRD and Gabriel members. We also organize during each international meeting of the network a Young Research Award, which allowed to give 2 prizes of the best presentation of the young scientist. And also, during the COVID pandemic, we have also provided a lot of capacity building for diagnostic, surveillance, and characterization of the variants. And also, we implement research projects, but I will discuss this later. Concerning the early response that we have provided since the beginning of 2020, in fact, all our members were very mobilized for the diagnostic activities, and we provide a lot of support for them to start their diagnostic activities. At the time, there were no commercial kits available during this time, so we provide, for example, primers that has been published by La Charité. We provide enzymes, positive control, thanks to the European network EVAG, which is a network with a great virus collection. And so this allows to start diagnostic, COVID-19 diagnostic. We also implement some research capacity concerning COVID-19 with a study on nosocomial transmission of COVID-19 in different places, in Mali, in Bangladesh, Madagascar, etc. And we also mobilize some skills to track SARS-CoV-2 variants. And when we start these activities, we organize a mapping of the capacity within the network at the beginning of the pandemic. And here you can see all the steps that are needed, from the sample collection to the sequence data analysis that is reported to GSAID. And what we saw that there were a lot of missing skills at this time, missing skills in bioinformatics, the availability, also the access of reagents and consumables was very difficult. There is also some gap in IT infrastructures. Human resources were not sufficient. And also there was a problem in access to sequencing platform. So we decided to provide support for the detection of variant of concern by a stepwise approach with different partners, with 2 partners in Bangladesh, with Lebanon, with a partner in Cameroon and Madagascar. So the first step was the implementation of variant screening by RT-PCR. It's a targeted PCR that detects specific mutation or deletion of the variants. And this was done for routine diagnostic. The advantage is it is very quick to obtain the results. Limited resources are required, and it is low cost. There are also, of course, some limitations. It's sometimes difficult to discriminate between variants, and is not suitable for a detection of new variants. So that's why we also work on the second step of our approach, is to perform whole genome sequencing with different sequencing platforms. And this allows us to build capacities for NGS library preparation. Sequencing was either outsourced or was done internally. And also we build a lot of capacity in terms of bioinformatics for sequence analysis. So now we have different type of activities, research activities within the network, and we focus on topics that are public health interest. And these topics have been selected by according to the needs of the members, but by a bottom-up approach. So we have 4 main activities that federates the network: acute respiratory infections, tuberculosis, antimicrobial resistance, and now also SARS-CoV-2. So we work a lot, our members work a lot with vulnerable population, such as refugees, mothers and children, and people living in remote areas. So we have different kinds of research. It could be clinical research, operational research, surveillance with One Health approach for antimicrobial resistance, and also surveillance and characterization. And in the context of a research project, we perform a lot of transfer technology. For us, training is very important, and it's also the opportunity, for example, for the TB topic to evaluate new innovative diagnostic tests. We have also a program of quality assurance, which allows to organize EQA, to use harmonized SOP, and to also perform audits when there is some clinical research study that are implemented. This slide shows you just the number, the distribution of research topics within the network. As you can see, 15 members works on COVID. After that, there are a lot of members working on acute respiratory infections, on AMR, and tuberculosis. And now I will give you some example of what kind of study, collaborative study are ongoing in the network. So I will start with the pneumonia. Pneumonia accounts for 15 of all deaths in children under 5 years. It can be caused by viruses, bacteria, or fungi. It can be prevented by immunization, by adequate nutrition, and it also can be accurately treated if it is well diagnosed. However, more than 40% of pneumonia cases are inappropriately misdiagnosed, especially in LMIC. So we have 2 ongoing projects. The first one is a prospective study on pneumococcal colonization in children and adults that is running in Cambodia, in India, in Paraguay. And the objective of this study is to measure the colonization rate of Streptococcus pneumoniae and what are the serotypes, the predominant serotypes that circulate in children under 5 years of age, and that have already, the countries have already introduced the PCV, which is the vaccine. A second study is done on acute respiratory infection. Wow. in refugee camps to improve and adapt patient care in the case of humanitarian crisis. We work also on TB to improve the diagnostics and management of tuberculosis among the most vulnerable population. As you can see, there are more than 1 million children under 5 with TB disease, and there is a problem for the diagnostic for the children because the collection of sputum is very difficult in this population, and the performance of the tests are not so good. So the aim of the study is to evaluate the performance of two blood tests, RISC-6 and a gene based on host response, to allow the triage and diagnosis of children on extrapulmonary tuberculosis. And this will improve patient management through non-sputum testing and the proof of concept for molecular diagnosis of TB that can be decentralized also at the community level. Now the last topic, it's antimicrobial resistance. As you know, it's a new pandemic, a silent pandemic. It's one of the top 10 global public health threats. It's a major concern, especially in LMIC with around 700 deaths every year linked to resistant infections. If the trends continue, AMR will result in over 10 million deaths per year by 2070. So we have different activities, and just to mention that we have started to implement the WHO statistical protocol, which is One Health surveillance, which target only one resistant pathogen, which is Isbl E. coli, in humans, in the community, in animals, and in environment. And this allows to have baseline data on Isbl E. coli prevalence, and allow to have a kind of monitors to assess the impact of future AMR intervention. We have also now some members that integrate international consortium funded by GPIMR, which allow to upscale the statistical protocol. We have also a fund from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that allow to develop a data science center for AMR. This will allow to build capacity for AMR data collection, to process the data, to analyze, to visualize, and to disseminate, especially for the stakeholders, for the Ministry of Health in particular. And we will start a One Health surveillance in the community to target pregnant women and their household, and to assess risk factor for Isbl E. coli carriage in the close environment of the family, which represent a complex One Health network. And now just to thanks to all our members, and thank you for your attention.
Merci beaucoup et désolé de vous avoir mis la pression.
Non, c'est pas grave.
Alors, comme nous sommes rattrapés par le temps et qu'elle intervient aussi dans le panel, donc nous allons réserver les questions pour plus tard. Donc je vous prie de me rejoindre. Donc nous allons passer à la prochaine session qui est une table ronde autour des expériences qui ont été acquises et les leçons aussi apprises sur les réseaux scientifiques. Donc je voudrais bien inviter Dr Mariama Diallo pour nous rejoindre. Ensuite, professeur John Langon et professeur Yap Boum 2. Et ce sera peut-être si nous pouvons aussi avoir un deuxième micro. beaucoup, Gaussou. Alors, donc là, c'est un réel plaisir de monitorer de chairer cette session qui est un prolongement de ce qui se fait donc, par rapport aux objectifs de WANIDA. WANIDA a pour principal objectif de permettre la collaboration en termes de recherche pour améliorer la qualité pour tout le monde et pour permettre aux chercheurs de bénéficier des occasions de collaborer avec d'autres chercheurs du même domaine et aussi au niveau pluridisciplinaire. Donc, si vous voulez, l'objectif de cette table ronde, c'est de voir quelles sont les différentes approches qu'il y a eu avec différents réseaux qui sont représentés. Je prierai à chaque intervenant de se présenter avant de commencer lorsqu'on va intervenir. Donc, nous avons le réseau WANIDA, nous avons le réseau Gabriel, CRIC et le réseau Pasteur qui sont présents pour partager avec nous sur ça. Donc, alors, sans tarder, je vais d'abord commencer par Dr Mariama Diallo par rapport à sa question. Donc, pour d'abord savoir est-ce que vous pouvez nous décrire brièvement en 2-3 minutes comment est-ce que votre centre bénéficie du fait d'être dans WANIDA?
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, professeur. Donc, je vais commencer par me présenter. Donc, je m'appelle Mariama Sadio Diallo. Je suis médecin immunologiste et je suis maître assistante à la faculté des sciences et techniques de la santé de l'université Gamal Abdel Nasser. En plus, mes domaines de recherche, c'est surtout le VIH, les hépatites, également la méningite et maintenant avec l'avènement du SARS-CoV. Donc, on travaille également sur le SARS-CoV. Je suis également la directrice générale adjointe du Centre d'excellence pour la prévention et le contrôle des maladies transmissibles. Donc, si on me demande ce que WANIDA m'a apporté, je pense qu'il y a déjà la preuve, c'est que je suis là. Donc, je pense que c'est par là, en fait, je suis déjà là. Je pense que sans WANIDA, je ne serais pas venue au Ghana, parce que je n'ai pas de relations privilégiées, je n'ai pas de connaissances. Mais le fait d'être dans le réseau, cela m'a permis de venir ici, mais également de nouer des partenariats, des études, des projets multicentriques et d'être associé à des travaux scientifiques, ce qui est très bien pour un chercheur. Donc, je pense que c'est l'un des points les plus parlants. Deuxième point, c'est que je suis venue avec 3 PhD et une étudiante en master pour permettre à ces étudiants-là également de se faire leur propre réseau. C'est-à-dire de discuter avec des étudiants venant d'autres centres et d'établir leur répertoire en vue de l'avenir, parce qu'on construit l'avenir dans le partenariat, dans la collaboration. Et cela, c'est important. Je pense que le partage d'expériences au niveau régional est la clé vraiment de la réussite de l'Afrique. Mais également, et cela va nous amener à des associations avec des chercheurs de l'étranger. Mais je pense qu'entre nous, on doit déjà pouvoir collaborer dans les domaines et mutualiser. Je discutais avec les miniers. Okay? La santé et la mine, c'est quelque chose qui va ensemble. Mais je pense que c'est maintenant qu'on va commencer à prendre conscience qu'il y a des thématiques, qu'il y a des choses à faire dans ces domaines. Donc je pense que le réseau ACE, c'est vraiment de mettre des chercheurs africains ensemble, mais également le réseau WANIDA va permettre également les chercheurs des mêmes domaines de mutualiser les acquis.
Merci beaucoup pour cette réponse. Je pense qu'en tant que centre bénéficiaire, ce sont des aspects importants. Je vais passer la parole à professeur John pour dire que Cannes a été vraiment un réseau qui a beaucoup réussi. Je voudrais en quelques mots que vous nous dites qu'est-ce que vous pensez être les facteurs importants de succès et comment pensez-vous pouvoir répliquer ce succès ou bien l'étendre. Yes.
Thank you. What's the reason for our success? Well, I think one thing is very clear from what we've done. We're 6 partners and we all thought exactly the same thing. That is, we identified a gap in where we could help training people, or not really training because we're talking about experienced scientists, but helping people bridge the gap between being a postdoc and an independent investigator in Africa. And I think that's really important, that we're appealing to the African diaspora and those in Africa to remain, and we're giving them a limited amount of help, but enough help to let them establish themselves. And I think we all agreed on that point. We would not have been successful without having 18 unbelievably fabulous fellows. And I think they just represent the potential of students and postdocs in Africa. They were absolutely superb, every single one of them. And because they're at this stage of their careers, they're already driven. They're driven to go to independence and don't need guidance. It's all self-motivation. And they motivated themselves, and they interacted with their cohort, and they motivated each other. And they've all been amazingly successful. I can't tell you how proud we are of them. And I think that's what's made it successful. But by picking postdocs at this stage of the career, you're almost bound for success because they're so driven. And I really do hope that we've helped place people into a larger infrastructure. The other reason why I think we've been successful is our aims actually are small, defined, or even fairly limited. We wanted to address one aspect in a way we could measure it. With the skills that we have, we can't change the infrastructure of African research. We can't change the global problems we have with sustainability. We can only do what we can do, which is basic science and teaching people to do it properly and help them move their career on. And I think that has been evident. We haven't defined measurable outputs. How did they publish? How did they do their research? Did they get a better job when they finished? Are they still in Africa? So these are limited but defined endpoints. And I think that's what we measure our success on. So I think for an institute like ours and our partners, this is the way to go.
Merci beaucoup. Donc, je retiens dans les clés succès, c'est déjà l'identification d'un intérêt commun pour tous les partenaires qui vont travailler sur le projet et l'accompagnement de jeunes chercheurs à travers des programmes de bourse et de financement. Donc, je vais me retourner vers mon collègue Yap pour dire, alors, à votre avis, quels sont les aspects qui sont les plus sous-évalués dans la collaboration, dans la recherche au niveau international, spécialement dans le contexte nord-sud ou bien les relations sud-sud, et qui nécessiterait qu'il y ait des discussions pour que ces types de réseaux aient un meilleur succès.
Merci beaucoup pour l'invitation et pour la question. En entrant dans la salle, il y a un poster qui met en avant les différents facteurs pour la recherche. Et le premier, c'est Equitable Partnership. On a également mentionné dans les valeurs principales du réseau l'équité. Et je pense que l'équité aujourd'hui, c'est l'un des challenges majeurs pour nos réseaux. Si je demande à l'audience sur 10 articles qui sont publiés sur des recherches faites en Afrique, combien, d'après vous, ont un auteur africain qui soit premier ou dernier? Entre 1 et 10. Une réponse? Out of 10 articles published for research implement in Africa, according to you, how many of them will have an African first or last authors? 3. Okay, he is very right. So I had to speak in English. So, and that for us, it's a real challenge. It's a challenge. Why is it a challenge? Is because the first or the last author are actually the one who carry the responsibility of telling the story. So if 7 out of 10 articles have a non-African as first or last, while they are implementing Africa, there's a challenge. And I think that's really something that we need to address as African institution, but also as partners and even as ethical committee. We all submit our research to ethical committee. They also need to follow and ensure that at the end of the day, we have the adequate recognition. Why is it important? It is important because it shows that we have ownership. We have ownership of our research. We have ownership of our findings. When you have those results, then you will be the one to carry them on, to go and see the Ministry of Health, to go and see the community, and to ensure that there is the adequate research uptake. So, to you, it's really equity.
Yeah. Thank you. So we are extending the list of things that make the collaboration successful. So I'm going to switch for just one question in English, and I go back to French. So since my friend have influenced me. And so I have a question to Florence. Since you have presented a lot of research you are running, and you have a huge capacity building program. So the question is, you are navigating on 16 countries in 3 continents. So how do you navigate the nuance across the different continents and countries? How do you achieve this?
Merci, je vais continuer en français du coup. Donc oui, c'est vrai que le réseau Gabriel, il est présent sur 3 continents, 16 pays. Ces diversités géographiques peut être une richesse, une force, mais il y a beaucoup de challenges et il peut y avoir des difficultés. Alors pourquoi c'est une richesse? Parce que ça nous permet de mettre en place des études multicentriques. Par exemple, quand on a commencé le réseau, on a implémenté une étude sur la pneumonie chez les enfants hospitalisés de moins de 5 ans pour étudier l'étiologie, et cela a été réalisé avec 9 partenaires, et du coup ça nous a permis d'avoir des données sur l'étiologie de la pneumonie, de les comparer entre les différents pays. Ça permet aussi d'harmoniser les protocoles. Quand on met en place des études multicentriques, c'est vraiment important d'avoir la même méthodologie, d'avoir les mêmes... c'est pour ça qu'on développe les SOP, on les partage, on les harmonise pour pouvoir comparer les résultats. Ça permet également, en fait, les membres du réseau s'entraident. Et par exemple, dans le cadre d'un projet sur l'AMR, on a l'équipe brésilienne qui a accueilli des jeunes chercheurs de Madagascar et du Cameroun pour les former sur la métagénomique dans le cadre de leur projet. On a également des collaborations au sein du réseau. Certains membres, par exemple au Bangladesh, il y a 3 membres du réseau et il y a beaucoup de collaboration entre eux. Et par exemple, un membre a formé l'autre sur le séquençage. Donc on essaye vraiment à la fois d'avoir des interventions, des collaborations internationales, mais aussi essayer de renforcer au niveau régional. C'est pour ça qu'on structure aussi le réseau autour de thématiques, ce qui permet de fédérer. Et les difficultés, ça vient plus de la localisation. Nos membres ont des fois des difficultés dans l'accès des réactifs, par exemple. Des réactifs, ce qui est problématique et ce qui nécessite beaucoup d'efforts au niveau logistique. Et voilà.
La logistique. Oui, c'est vrai qu'au niveau international, la logistique est une question qui va être cruciale, surtout quand on doit déplacer du matériel ou installer des infrastructures pour les tests. Donc je reviens un peu à Dr Mariama. Donc vous avez parlé de ce que WANIDA a fait de bien pour vous et en quoi ça constitue une opportunité. Mais maintenant, quels sont les challenges que pose ce type de coopération et à votre avis, à quoi ressemble le futur de WANIDA?
Je pense que le challenge, c'est de pérenniser les acquis. C'est-à-dire d'essayer déjà de maintenir ce qui est là et d'aller à l'échelle, c'est-à-dire que d'avoir encore plus de collaboration dans des domaines variés et dans des thématiques diverses. Ça, je pense que c'est le challenge. Mais je pense que aussi, une fois que on a déjà commencé à collaborer, alors c'est facile de continuer cette collaboration et d'essayer d'associer d'autres acteurs, peut-être de même pays, pour pérenniser cette collaboration. Je pense également que c'est le lieu de dire qu'on peut mutualiser, c'est-à-dire qu'on va essayer, nous, la Guinée, par exemple, d'amener nos étudiants ici et qu'ici, ils amènent les étudiants chez nous. Ça permet en fait de brasser et de permettre également d'avoir le réseau un peu plus large, en partant également impliquer les étudiants au niveau du réseau. Et c'est le lieu de saluer en fait l'organisation de ce symposium, mais également de féliciter ceux qui ont eu le courage de participer au challenge Ma thèse en 180 secondes. Donc c'est pas facile, mais c'est également une manière de permettre aux doctorants de communiquer sur leurs thématiques en des termes plus simples, parce que quand on est doctorant, on a toujours les grosses thématiques dans la tête et c'est facile de communiquer dessus. Mais également de donner envie aux masters qui sont dans la salle d'aller vers le PhD, de dire que c'est pas compliqué, on peut y arriver. Donc je pense que le challenge c'est ça, c'est de permettre au réseau de rester soudé, mais également d'impliquer nos étudiants dans ce réseau-là, pour leur permettre de faciliter ou d'avoir une mobilité au niveau des différentes universités sous-régionales.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais rebondir sur le mot implication, parce que CRIC implique plusieurs universités, 5 institutions africaines, et apparemment vous souhaiterez avoir plus de partenaires francophones. Et comme nous, on ne parle pas anglais, comme une blague, comment pensez-vous que ça va se faire, cet engagement d'institutions francophones?
I think that it's not a problem, to be honest. Between us, we'll understand, and if we really want to work together, we'll work together. Yeah. We all learn French, mostly we've forgotten it, but we can always relearn it. And similarly, you've probably come across English, I'm sure you can relearn it. It will happen. It will absolutely happen. And our rationale for extending, we already have 3 or 4 Francophone fellows in our program who are just finishing, who are at Institut Pasteur or other places in Senegal and Côte d'Ivoire. So we know it works. We know that we can interact. And we've had a Beninoise who worked in the Gambia, who did perfectly fine, came to the CRIP, was perfectly fine. I believe if people are driven, they'll do it. But we have to, I would rather ignore the language barrier, to be honest. I worked in Germany a long time. I happily spoke any of the 3 languages that were around me, with as far as I could go. I'm sure we'll manage. The CRIC has an understanding with the Pasteur Paris, and out of that came this discussion that perhaps we could extend our interests to the Pasteur Africa networks, and that's how this came about. And so I don't know how it'll go forward. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, a whole day of how we're going to find a way of interacting. But we already know that Francophone Fellows will join the next network. And I think as we go forward, we hope to extend things I have to say we cannot extend beyond what we can do. We have to accept we're a basic science institute with a lot of wonderful technologies that we can help people with. We can't do all the epidemiology, all the public health, much as we'd love to. We can, of course, contact people with our hospitals around us that collaborate with us to do that. But our value in this is to provide a kind of focal point for our partners to develop the fellows in their institutions. So while we may not increase massively, we will certainly incorporate new fellows from institutes outside our partners, and if people are willing to fund us, we'll extend. I mean, there's no point extending the partners if we only get £5 million and everybody gets 500,000. They can't do very much with it. So we've got to be realistic, but expansion is on the cards, and extension in terms of what we will do is also on the cards. We've listened to our fellows. They're all of one voice. 2 years is too short. And we need lots of technology, and we need to develop it in Africa. So those are the areas where we will seek to help them with a 4-year fellowship and more chance of developing their own technologies. And I think that's as much as we can conceivably do.
Très bien. Merci beaucoup pour cette réponse. Donc là, nous allons prendre peut-être quelques questions dans la salle avant de conclure. Il y a quelqu'un ici. Les micros. Ah, ok. Merci beaucoup. N'oubliez pas de vous présenter. Donc, on prendra les questions, ensuite on distribuera la parole pour les réponses.
Je suis Alabi Taoufik du Centre d'excellence africain sur le changement climatique, la biodiversité et l'agriculture durable en Côte d'Ivoire. Je vais rebondir sur la réaction de M. Boum. Je partage bien évidemment la question d'équité, mais la grosse problématique, c'est l'apportage de fonds. Voilà, quand on n'a pas la paternité des financements, on ne peut prétendre royalement à la propriété des résultats qui sont imbriqués. Donc, ce challenge-là, comment est-ce que vous l'envisagez en termes de solutions durables au niveau de l'Afrique? Voilà.
Oui, une autre question dans la salle? Oui, David.
Thank you. I wanted to ask a quick question inspired by Prof. Yap's comments. When you talk about the lack of senior or first authorships on papers driven or actually derived from African science, what is the role, or how do we motivate the funders to make this an absolute requirement to have an equal seat at the table? Because so much of the bureaucracy that comes from the funders themselves starts from the premise of insisting on having a lead applicant from the US, from Europe. How do we change that and convince them that this is not the foundation for any form of equal partnership? You can't say that on one hand and do that on the other. How do we convince them of this? Because they like to say that they are equal, but then they demand the kind of the opposite. Where do we start?
Yeah, we want to answer after all the question is. So, maybe one last question. Yeah, before we give the floor to the panelists.
Yeah, thank you so much. I also wanted to talk about that issue. I mean, I've heard about many African scientists who participated in studies, and at the end of the day, when the paper is published, there's no African scientist in it. I think that is simply an issue of collaboration. There has to be discussion, within the scientific, the scientific group in order to be able to determine right from the beginning of the project how are the papers going to be written, because it is an ethical matter, because you can't participate in the study, and then at the end of the day, when the study is published, your name is not there. That will discourage many people, in working, and or sometimes there are also students who need the papers more than the professors, so, and their names need to be in those papers so that they can be recognized, and that will encourage them and also help them to move up, with their careers. So I think that when there is a project and we want to embark on that project, it is important that discussions be made right from the beginning of the study to make sure that the African partners are not going to be left behind. Yeah. So I think that this is a culture that we have to adopt, even before the studies starts, because generally I've received many requests, from people from the U.S., from Europe, and I will tell them, how are we going to deal with publication? If you tell me no, it's going to be our partners, then I say, no, we can't work like that. And there is one issue that generally happens, is that many Africans are simply used as sample collectors. And we cannot continue like that. We just have to stop. We have to say that, no, if you want to work with our samples, you have to either take a student, somebody is going to go and work on those samples as part of, capacity development, or, you have to be able to do some of the studies here, but we have to be partners, we have to be equal partners, and we have to participate, all of us, in the publication. Even if sometimes maybe if their writing is not good, then, we can work together in order to be able to improve the quality of the paper, to make it high quality paper. Yeah, that was my contribution.
Ok, merci beaucoup. C'était en même temps une question et une contribution. Et Yap est très populaire. Il a touché apparemment un point sensible, donc je vais commencer par vous. Donc maintenant, si on peut avoir vraiment des réponses concises en maximum 2 minutes, parce qu'on a déjà dépassé le temps. Je sais que c'est un challenge, mais vous êtes des chercheurs, donc vous allez trouver la solution.
Merci bien. So first thing first, we need to admit that hard things are hard. Hard things are hard. It's really a challenge to decolonize global health. You've mentioned the issue of funding. The funding source should not impose those rules, and I agree with the last professor who was speaking. We need to agree as we start the study. Even when we say that, I recall I was in Uganda implementing a clinical trial on malaria. And we were working with some partners from MGH, Harvard University. And then we have to put the study on standby before starting, during 6 months. Because we were not agreeing on who will be the first and the last, prior to the study. So it's really hard, but we had, as you mentioned, to push. So the actual issue, it's not just us as African being first or last as a token. It's actually how do we invest in build the training capacity. We're discussing with, I think, Global Africa. WANIDA also has some training possibility. CRIC may also help. We need to train our young researchers, to train on how to write, because even when they have the data, are we all able to write those articles? And most of them in English. Most of the time, no. We also need to appreciate that. So it's critical to invest on those training and to look for the fund locally. It's interesting when you look at this bandroll. You see World Bank, AFD, ERD in here. Where's Africa CDC? Where's the African Development Bank? Where's Dangote? So we also need to go and find this local money that will give us more power on promoting our young researchers. Maybe I will stop from there.
Thank you. John?
I think David and this gentleman's point were absolutely right. And I think, in a way, I'm just going to blow our own trumpet again. I think the way we've done it is the CRIC PIs are not on these papers because they are from the African young scientist in the African institution. And I think that's how they took ownership. And I think it's taken ownership of it. And we should be telling funding agencies that there shouldn't just be one PI, to be honest. I've never understood that. I understand you might need one financial centre, but why do you only have to have one PI? Why can't we be telling wherever, NIH or whatever, that it's not about PIs, it's about a real consortium and taking ownership of it. And I think we are starting to train our early career scientists into doing that and into applying for funding themselves, rather than relying on a European partner or an American partner to apply for the funding. There's no reason why somebody from here can't apply for Wellcome funding. They just got to be brave enough to do it and get the right support to write a grant, and that's what we should be doing.
Thank you. Before giving the floor to Florence, you have some example, but quickly, very quickly.
Thank you. Not actually example, but we wrote 2 articles. The first one is the Douala Equity Checklist, which I invite you to go and see. It was published in PLOS Public Global Health, who gives some checklist on what you should look for before starting a study. And the other one is Behind the Scene, that was published in the New England, highlighting the fact that when you look at the overhead, especially those provided by the NIH, if you are a US-based organization, you can go up to 50% overhead. But if you are a non-US based, the maximum you can get is 8%. So you can read and see how we can actually advocate to have toward more equity.
Thank you. And also we have Florence. Also, maybe you can answer to this question also.
Moi, je pense, je suis aussi tout à fait d'accord concernant le fait qu'il faut vraiment renforcer les capacités d'écriture scientifique, que ce soit pour les publications que pour la recherche de financement. Il y a quelques années, on avait essayé de lancer des ateliers de formation. On a organisé 2 ou 3 avec donc une personne qui était anglophone et qui s'adressait à des jeunes étudiants francophones avec leurs données et donc essayer à partir des données qu'ils avaient obtenues dans le cadre de leur recherche, de structurer un article, comment faire une introduction, comment faire matériel et méthode, etc. Et après de les suivre jusqu'à l'acceptation. Mais bon, on n'a pas eu de financement après pour continuer. Et je pense que ça, c'est une activité qui pourrait être inclue dans un module dans le cadre d'un programme de PhD au niveau universitaire. Parce que c'est vraiment la base de tout pour un chercheur. Rechercher des financements et publier ses résultats.
Je suis parfaitement d'accord avec ça, d'autant plus qu'aujourd'hui, dans beaucoup d'universités africaines francophones, on s'inspire du modèle anglophone. Parce que nous, nos thèses de doctorat n'avaient pas d'enseignement à proprement parler. C'est le doctorant et son directeur jusqu'à la fin de la thèse. Mais maintenant, on installe de plus en plus des modules de formation et les modules, pas forcément de rédaction de projet, de rédaction d'articles, mais de rédaction de projets, sont nécessaires même pour les enseignants-chercheurs, parce qu'on a beaucoup d'enseignants-chercheurs qui ont, pour les aspects scientifiques, on n'a pas à s'inquiéter. Mais quand il s'agit d'aller chercher des financements, ils ont presque peur de commencer à écrire. Donc je vais donner la parole peut-être à Mariam avant de clôturer, ou si tu veux ajouter quelque chose autour de l'équité ou la manière d'atteindre l'équité scientifique dans les collaborations dans les réseaux.
Je pense que ça, c'est un gros sujet dont on pourrait parler toute la journée. Mais bon, je vais essayer de faire court. Je pense, comme vous l'avez dit, tout à l'heure, on en parlait. Souvent, les chercheurs, ils ont des idées, mais après, coucher ces idées sur le papier, c'est difficile. Et argumenter ces idées pour pouvoir aller chercher des fonds, c'est aussi difficile. Donc, je pense que ça pourrait faire l'objet de formation et de renforcement de capacité au niveau des chercheurs pour les pousser à aller chercher des fonds. Mais j'adhère également au fait qu'il faut déjà voir au niveau local, est-ce qu'il y a des bailleurs de fonds? Parce que parfois, il y a des institutions qui ont des lignes et qui ne savent pas ce qu'il faut faire avec ces lignes. Mais il n'y a personne qui demande. Donc, quand on ne demande pas, on n'a pas. Donc, deux fois, il faut aller chercher au niveau des institutions, au niveau local. Parfois, il y a des choses à grappiller. Même dans les ministères au niveau local, parfois, il y a des choses qui dorment et qu'on peut aller chercher. Donc, je pense que si on est financé par des fonds au niveau national, au niveau régional, c'est plus facile de batailler pour le premier auteur. Voilà. Parce que là, on n'a pas à rendre compte à X ou Y, mais on a à rendre compte au niveau local, au niveau régional. Et c'est vrai que parfois, pour les chercheurs qui ont envie d'aller et qui ont besoin d'articles, ça pose problème. Ce n'est pas la compétence qui manque, mais parfois, c'est qu'on n'est pas dans le bon consortium et on a des difficultés pour publier.
Merci beaucoup, Mariama, pour cette brillante contribution. Donc, je vais essayer de résumer en 2 minutes tout ce qui s'est dit. Donc, d'abord, sur tout ce qui touche les bénéfices de ces réseaux-là, il y a le potentiel d'échange à l'échelle régionale et les collaborations inter- et pluridisciplinaires. Mais parmi les facteurs de succès, il y a l'identification de sujets et de projets d'intérêt commun, que tout le monde y voit. Ensuite, l'accompagnement et la formation des jeunes chercheurs à travers des programmes de fellowship. Ensuite, la pérennisation des activités ou des acquis par rapport à ce qu'on a déjà fait sur les réseaux. Et ensuite, essayer de voir comment on passe à l'échelle à ce niveau. Ensuite, il faudra gérer les différences culturelles qui sont en général facilement dépassables s'il y a la volonté de travailler ensemble. Et ensuite, s'il s'agit de l'équité scientifique, pour moi, soyons plus combatifs et proactifs. Et ensuite, essayons de faire du lobbying et de l'advocacy pour que ça marche. En tout cas, je vous remercie beaucoup d'avoir participé à ce panel et je remercie aussi WANIDA de me faire l'honneur de me confier le chairing de ce panel. Donc, je vous remercie le public d'avoir bien écouté et je remets la parole aux organisateurs. Merci.
Okay, so we will start the closing ceremony in a few minutes. Our guest of honor is arriving, so in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Time to wrap up.
Well, we've been doing it, but they're not listening. We'll continue. No, it's African. We should have had. Yeah. What about the postdoc? Do you have the artwork?
Yes, they have it loaded.
So they can put it up.
Miriam, the adverts.
Advert for closing ceremony.
Hello. So, I'm happy and sad at the same time. I'm happy that we've had a fantastic 3 days, you know, absolutely beyond our expectations. And I'm sad that you guys are all going home. So how do we resolve this conundrum? Yeah, round table. It means that you come back again, right? You come again. So anyway, my friends, it's been a great pleasure hosting all of you and having such great, you know, scientific discussion as well as networking over the last 3 days. We are so honored as WACBABE, as WANIDA, as University of Ghana, as Africa, to have had this meeting and hosted all of you and had so much productive discussions and had so much fun. So let's appreciate each and everybody. Before I say the thank yous, we have some business to do, which is to give awards. We always encourage young people to cooperate and collaborate, but we also encourage excellence and outstanding work. And so we like to recognize outstanding work. So one aspect of being a successful scientist is to be able to compete. Competition is not bad. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but you learn through the process. And so we recognize the winners today, but we also appreciate the efforts of everybody who participated and put in an effort. So first, let's appreciate everybody who participated. Now, I hear that it was so competitive because everybody did such a great job for both the thesis, 3-minute thesis presentations, as well as the poster and oral and everything. Everybody did such a great job, so it was very competitive. So it was either we don't give awards at all, or we give a few. So Peter and the team will explain to us how they came by the award winners. And then we would present the awards. Thank you.
Thank you. Mampenda. So for the 3-minute thesis, what happened is we had 4 judges, and we were all very close. And we had 4 clear people who distinguished themselves. And we really, it was like a whisker between each of them. So we spent probably an hour, more than an hour, trying to, okay, not 3 hours, trying to figure out between them, and we came up with something that we hope will satisfy. Well, it satisfied the jury somehow, right? Any?
No.
So for the 3-minute thesis, we were able to get one clear winner, 2 tied second, and 3rd place.
Yes.
Oh, 4th, yes. I thought about it when I was, yeah, it's 4th place. Should I announce? Okay. We'll let the chairman announce.
No. You so,
I don't have the names.
Okay, so you give them to me in the order in which we present. So this for
No.
3 minutes.
Yeah, we have 4. Let's start from 4 to...
Oh, 4.
All right. So I'm going to call people at random to help present. So Jack, please, can you help present the 3-minute thesis contest? So there are 4 winners. So we start with Julian Campbell. Wait. Next is Ali Badara Tuari. Oh, I forgot to read the prize. These are very handsome prizes, so please, excuse me, let me read the prize. This is a prize of 1,000 euros to participate in a scientific event. So 1,000 euros.
The first one was 500.
Yeah. Okay. So this is another 1,000 euros, and this is for the second prize now. This goes to Fatumatu Bintu Traore. And then the first among equals with a prize of 1,500 euros to participate in a scientific event and the production of a comic book about your research. So it's quite a nice prize, eh? So we have Huefa Adeline Tatiana. All right. Dr. Jean Langon, can you make the next presentation for us? Thank you. Which one? This poster? There are 2?
No, poster 1 and then oral 1.
Okay. So you stand this way. Stand this way here so that. So this is best poster presentation. A prize value of 1,000 euros again to participate in a scientific event. So this is for travel. And the winner is Becky Tete. She wasn't around.
Gone for coffee.
Okay. Any friend of Becky here to take the honors? You don't look like Becky. What's that? Let me make the correction. All right. Then the best oral presentation, also 1,000 euros to participate in the scientific event. Issa Dieng.
Well done. It was great.
So we're done? Okay.
Go quickly.
Think we're done?
I like that one. Am I done now?
Yes, thank you very much, Jean. Thank you. All right, so business is done. It's time to say thanks. I want to start with our funders. So ACE Partner is funded by IRD and AFD, so we want to appreciate ACE Partner. And all this would not be possible without the ACE project itself. Okay, so the ACE Impact Project, which is the foundation of all this. And Nikes reminded me to not forget to mention the mechanism of funding of ACE. It's quite interesting. We often criticize our governments for not supporting science. But under the ACE, they were tricked into supporting science. So the way the ACE system works, the funding mechanism was that the World Bank asked for countries to express interest to participate. And signing up to participate meant that if any institution in your country won the grant, the World Bank will give the money to the institution and charge it to your national debt. You get the connection. I think it's a very clever way of getting African governments to fund science. They would never put $8 million into WACBIP if we didn't play this trick. They wouldn't put $8 million in each of those other centers and then put in another 6.4 million the second time if we didn't play this game. So to their credit, they allowed themselves to be tricked. So let's appreciate them. But I think it's a clever mechanism that the World Bank used. And I think other funders should think about that. When we think about co-funding, let's use this trick. Let's ask the countries to accept it as a loan. Okay? Most African countries, they don't really hesitate in taking loans because they know that we will pay in the future. They don't have to worry. So they are very happy to take a loan. Okay, so I think it's a great funding mechanism. So we thank the World Bank for a clever mechanism to get our governments to put some of our money into science without feeling it. All right, so for this conference in particular, we want to appreciate the scientific committee. So we had a scientific committee that, designed the program, called for abstracts, did the scientific review of the abstracts, and then, made everything happen. So I was part of that scientific committee, but I'll be honest that I did very little work on the committee. So let's appreciate those who actually did the work. Gregory was one of them. Nikes. Peter, where's Peter Kwashi? And then we had reps from each of the centers, right? I don't have the list here, but all those who supported from each of the centers to be part of this. But these were the core team who worked to, set the basis for this meeting scientifically. Then the logistics, which is even more difficult than the science. Putting a meeting together like this, the science is very little. You can do that from your bedroom, right? You can organize the science from the bedroom. The logistics is a nightmare. So we need to appreciate those who did the logistics as well. So let's first appreciate Olivia. Olivia, please stand up, yeah? So I'm the chairman of WANIDA, but Olivia is actually the operational chair. Because everything, she tells me what needs to be done, and I say, yes, madam, please, let's do it. Okay, so mine is just to approve. She comes up with all the ideas and does all the heavy lifting. I just approve and send emails, that's all. So massive thanks to Olivia for everything WANIDA. Then we had support from Sabrina's group with Miriam and Zainab, so they also did a lot of heavy lifting, so please. Then we come home to the WAGB machine, yeah? You know what the WAGB machine is? Yeah, the WAGB machine is the invisible hand that makes sure that your water is on the table, your rooms are there, you're picked up from the airport, everything, you don't have to think, you know, they think for you. That's what's called a WAGB machine, which we've built over the years to be able to deliver research projects and to deliver meetings and conferences and workshops. So let's give it up to the WAGB machine. These people, they make me famous because it took me a while to assemble the best people to do each particular job. But once I had them, then I went to sleep, okay? Actually, I went on to do other jobs so that they will do the work, okay? But these people are amazing people. They are some of the best people to do each of the jobs they are doing, so I really appreciate the effort that they put in. So, you know, Sika, you know, Andrew is our communications guy. Gloria is there, Felix, you know, everybody, the entire machine works very well. Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for making the time to come, spending 3 days of your time with us, and with Crick and Pastor continuing tomorrow with an extra day. It's been amazing. We're very grateful. We're very honored. And we hope that we'll see you again soon. Once you come into the WAGB family, you remain part of the WAGB family. Stay in touch with us. Check our website, opportunities for more engagement, workshops, conferences, you know, fellowships, you know. Right now we have a postdoc fellowship for the WWW consortium that David talked about. So check out the advert on our website and on our social media. If you fit the bill, please come and join us. We want the best scientists on the continent working here. So please apply if you can. And keep looking out for opportunities. And also, you are an advocate for us. You've come and seen what we're trying to do here as an African institution. We hope that you carry the message and tell everybody that there's something going on here and we need the support to continue going. So I thank you very much and I'll see you all soon. Good night.
Yes, so I think the meeting is over. It's time to network. Just have fun. There's coffee out there. So we have our coffee break, and then that's it. So interact, and please leave your headset. Oh, okay. That's the advert over there. So please take note of that, and then, you know, you could apply. And kindly leave your headset on your tables or chairs for us to pick up. It is amazing having all of you around. So let's network, let's have the contact, and let's keep rolling. It is a pleasure to have you in Ghana for those who are, you know, the first time visiting Ghana. So that's it.
You can also announce. You can announce our social media platforms. We are. Yes, so I just want to add that we are present on all the various social media platforms. Just look for us and follow us, and you have all the updates of this program and any other events. So we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are on Twitter, we are on LinkedIn. Just use the search word WAGBIP and you find us there. Thank you.
Thank you. So just a last reminding that we are working with a journal to have all your abstract be available, published online. So we will send a mail to all those who have presented to can check their abstract and online. Thank you.